A little about the plot. The hero is a careless aristocrat who sleeps all the time. In one of the nights, he dreamed a strange dream where he is training with a sword throughout his life. After this dream, his life changes dramatically. He regularly begins to train, and through the ridicule of others every time proves that he has incredible talent and perseverance. What heights will he be able to reach? What difficulties will meet him on the way? All this you can see in the retelling. A little spoiler from me, the manhwa is very interesting, especially towards the end. One of the villagers noticed the hero, who was heading towards his village. The guy's face was incredibly angry, as if something terrible had happened. Although the villager didn't want the hero to live here, the elder gave his permission. After the hero arrived in the village, 3 days passed. His existence began to be forgotten, so quiet he was. Some residents began to show interest in the guy. A week passed. Children who saw the hero practicing with a sword took sticks and began to repeat. The villager still didn't care about the hero, even though he looked like a man who had experienced a lot of grief. A month passed. The hero continued practicing. No one saw him, but everyone could hear the sounds of the training. After another month, nothing changed. The villager working thought about the hero. He was incredibly curious about what the guy has been training for half a year. The man looked over the fence. Seeing the hero, he was disappointed, as he expected to see more. After what he saw, the villager decided to leave that place. A new family arrived in the village, a retired mercenary, his wife and daughter. The villager fell in love with this man's daughter, and after 2 years, he managed to marry her. Seljanan was determined to watch the hero's training every day. Even after 5 years, the hero continued his training with the sword. Even after 6 years, he continued his training. The villager managed to have a child, while the hero continued his training. More than 15 years have passed since the hero appeared in this village. Today, the villager forgot to visit him, but he was sure that he continued his training. The villager had become quite old. His grandson woke him up and told him it was time to get up. The old man's daughter asked her grandson not to disturb the man. He was invited to go to the market, but the old man refused. He looked out the window and decided to take a walk around the village. He walked and rejoiced at the beautiful weather. Everyone greeted him, as he was the elder of the village. As he walked, he thought about how the village had changed a lot. The old man stopped and said that only one place had remained the same. It had been over 30 years since the hero began his training. Suddenly, the old man's face changed, and he burst into the courtyard. The old man saw a picture of the hero kneeling on his knees, leaning on his sword. The hero was dead, and the man put him on the ground. He wished the hero to be in a good place. The boy woke up in the body of a child. He was frightened as he had seen a strange dream. Pereira Manor. This place was known for its trade. One of the guards said that the most popular people here were the apprentices. He told of a princess who was already a sorceress at the age of 11. The knights were very surprised, as sorcerers are incredibly rare. One knight interrupted the enthusiastic dialogue of his colleagues. He reminded that there is still an older son. There was silence for a second. This knight was shouted at, as they didn't want the newcomer to have a bad opinion of this place. Actually, the princess is really famous, but the eldest son was much more famous. He was called a feckless aristocrat. After the hero lost his mother at an early age, he did nothing. The guard asked what people were doing, and his face twisted as he saw Amelia and Curlia Pereira's second mate. The little girl asked who authorized the guards to make noise at the post. They bowed without a shadow of doubt and apologized. The little girl asked how the men were going to answer for their offense. The girl's mother reassured her daughter. The girl said that the soldiers had already realized their mistake, so there was no need to continue. The knights thanked the mother and daughter. As they left, the knights were still tense. Only when they left the site did they sigh. They continued to praise the girl and talk about what a different hero to them. The boy was furious. The hero was pissed that he couldn't sleep. He usually sleeps all the time, but now he can't. Something changed after the dream the guy had. The hero noticed that the dream was too realistic, and the guy's body could not wait. It required training. The hero asked the servant to come over. He asked what the boy wanted. The hero a little shyly asked to train with a sword. The servant was shocked that the laziest man decided to train with a sword. On the training ground, everyone looked at the boy. The knights couldn't believe what they were seeing. The others couldn't believe what was happening. It was the first time the lazy prince had ever stepped onto the training ground. The knights were discussing the fact that it's usually hard to see the hero's face, but here it was. People didn't understand what the hero was doing here. The guy walked up to a place that was very similar to the one in his dream. The servant began to explain that every MES is special, and he offered to call an expert to help him choose. To the man's surprise, the boy refused the offer. The hero's attention was drawn to the single sword. He grasped its hilt. One of the knights assumed it was a dream and was pinched. He got angry, while a servant tried to talk the prince out of it. The hero began to gasp for breath. The knights looked in surprise at the boy, and the servant was amazed. The hero, despite his weak muscles, was holding a heavy sword. The boy began to brandish the weapon. People watching this knew he would. Although the stance was not bad for the first time, but the result was expected. He was asleep the whole time. People were discussing the incident. When the hero was humiliated, they assumed that this was the impetus for him to start training. The crowd began to disperse. Everyone thought that the hero would last 3 days at most. The servant, however, was insulted. The servant began to give advice to the hero, as it would be very hard for him alone. He kept offering the talented swordsman as a teacher, but the hero was completely focused on the place. He was swinging his sword. The hero slipped and fell. The guy was exhausted. He was breathing very hard. But thanks to the MED, he had a calmness in his soul. The prince got up, repeating what he had seen in his dream. The heaviness in his chest was beginning to ease. Each swing of his sword helped the hero get rid of all his problems. There was no way he could stop. The hero was interrupted by the touch of a servant. He asked the guy to stop since it was already evening. The hero at first did not understand what the man was saying, but a little while later he lost consciousness. It was because the hero overdid it. The sun was already setting, and the hero could not understand how time could go so fast. The hero asked why the servant didn't go about his business, and the servant said he couldn't leave his prince. The servant said that he would come running, and the prince should rest. The hero said that he was unlikely to do such a thing again. Already in the room, the hero was incredibly sore. His muscles ached and his bones were breaking. Now the guy was sure that with such pain, he would never be able to sleep. 5 minutes later he fell asleep like a baby. A few days later, he sat in the kitchen eating a sandwich. The servant couldn't get used to the change in the hero. The hero was forced to continue his training because the itching in his body kept him awake. The hero liked that when he swung his sword he had no thoughts. The hero was determined to eat well before training and asked for more. There was a very active discussion among the knights about the event that was going to happen today. Grandpa approached one of them and asked for directions to the training ground. They inquired why the man was interested, and the man told them that he was a traveling knight. Grandpa said he had permission and started looking. The knights didn't wait and said they would take him as soon as their shift was over. Together they arrived at the training ground. The knights were again surprised that the prince had come. They argued over how long the hero would last, and one of the winners rejoiced. The winner of the bet got his money and was overjoyed. They began to argue a little. The old man was watching the boy closely. He could see that the hero is definitely not wasting time. The old man also noticed that the boy is very weak, lacking stamina. The old man was very curious how long the prince would last. He was sure that the hero would not last long. Suddenly everyone looked up at the sky as the wind picked up. One of the knights was surprised. In the sky, they saw a griffin that was right above them. And flying on top of this beast was Curlia. A griffin? This is a creature from legends that shouldn't exist in reality. The knights were horrified by the beast they saw. The sister descended from the bird and directed her evil gaze at the humans. In fact, the girl's ability allowed her to create an animal and give it life. The princess pointed her finger at the man and turned to him. He was incredibly frightened, but he responded. The girl kept pointing her finger at the other knights, but when it came to the old man, she didn't understand who it was. The old man wanted to explain, but she wouldn't listen. The girl started scolding the knights for having work hours. The man started to justify himself. The girl continued to press the guards. The brother turned to the girl. He asked what was the matter. The girl hesitated. She wanted to answer something, but in the end, she said to stop what the brother was doing. The hero didn't react to what his sister asked him to do. He turned his back to her, which made the girl angry. The sister began to shout, "As the brother all these years just sleeping, and now he has no chance to become stronger." The girl pointed at the newcomer and said that even he was better with a sword than her brother. The girl continued shouting, but her mom came and asked her to leave her brother alone and come to her. The girl wanted to object, but in front of her mom's authority, she didn't have a chance. In the same way, the girl did the knights a good job. Also, mom asked the hero not to overdo it. He said he would. The mom and daughter started to leave the training ground. The knights breathed a sigh of relief, but suddenly the bird that was nearby opened its mouth. The old man at this time was thinking about the famous girl. The old man was also very surprised that this whole mess didn't even shake the hero's concentration. In the evening in the castle, the girl was walking down the corridor. A servant spotted her and told her that the prince was asleep. The girl was determined to see her brother anyway, but the servant asked her to come back tomorrow. The girl got angry and let out some force and scared the servant. The servant was terrified by the pressure he felt from this girl. The hero's sister ordered the servant to be quiet and left, while the man continued kneeling in the hallway. The hero was sleeping sweetly as the sound of the alarm clock was heard. He woke up and saw a letter next to him. He opened it. There the sister wrote that she was very worried about her brother. She apologized for not saying it during the day. The girl also gave the hero a doll that would help him relax. On the back of the hero noticed that his mom had written that he could talk at any time if Karelia was bothering him. The hero was very happy that he had people who cared about him. A servant's voice came from the door to report that the food was ready. The servant was incredibly happy that the prince had changed. For the first time in a long time, the hero was dining with his family. His sister was nursing him back to health, and his mother asked her to calm down. The boy reflected and thanked the whole family for their kindness. He apologized for not saying it sooner, and said he loved them. The father said they loved him too, and suggested we continue the meal. The father heard that the hero had started training, and asked him not to overexert himself. The boy reassured his father. He said that everything was fine, and they shouldn't worry about him. People no longer laughed. They were genuinely surprised at the stability of the prince. The hero had already been practicing every day for half a month. The old man, on the other hand, started to regularly observe the hero's training. The old man originally thought that the guy was practicing because of pride, but he was wrong, as the hero is actually amazing since he is practicing every day. The old man was frightened by the fact that he had never met people with the same iron will as the hero. So the guy was still a child, which was quite amazing. The old man was incredibly curious about what heights the hero could reach. The hero waved his sword while the old man continued to watch him. The old man turned to the man and asked if the hero had a teacher. The man said that the head of the manor plans to find a mentor for the prince soon, as he is trying hard. The man said that the most likely teacher would be Orn Zukran. The old man got close and began to shout that this was wrong. The old man knew that such a man should not be allowed near such a talent as a hero, because he drinks and yells at soldiers for no reason. The old man started to leave. He couldn't let the hero's talent be jeopardized. He was determined to meet the master of the manor. After he arrived at the manor, he started talking to the head. The father was immediately pleased, as he didn't expect his son to have potential. The smile quickly left his father's face. Porno Fencing Academy. This is the best academy where the most talented students gather regardless of their gender status. Father knew that it was almost impossible to get in, and it was very easy to get out. A little later, the father told his son about the academy. He warned that he would not force him, but if Iron wanted to, he would support him. The hero did not know what to say, so his father gave him a few days to think. Iron arrived in his room, where he sat on the couch and thought about what his father told him. The hero was worried about whether he would succeed, since he had spent 10 years just lying in bed. Now, however, he had no intention of treading on the same ground, so the decision was obvious. Iron walked into his father's room. He stated in a confident voice that he wanted to go to the academy. Later, he and the servant had already arrived at the carriage, and the hero decided to say goodbye. The sister wished her brother good luck. The carriage started its journey to the best academy in the world. It was actually the first time the hero left the manor. The servant showed the thing that Curlia asked him to give to his brother. The hero was surprised, and very grateful to his sister. The servant notified Iron that they had arrived. They saw a beautiful gate. The servant said he would escort the prince to the entrance. Iron said that was not necessary, and he would go himself. The hero said that from now on he was an apprentice, and he needed to get used to acting alone. The servant was very happy that the boy was becoming more independent. The hero said goodbye to the man. In farewell, the servant wished the hero to achieve great results. The hero walked up to the gate. There he saw a picture of Prince Brad Lloyd's servants praising him. The guards immediately let them through. Seeing the hero, the guard was surprised. The hero introduced himself and showed his letter of recommendation. The guards immediately began to smile. One of the guards said that he knew the knight who recommended the hero. He had heard about his exploits. The hero was explained the way and wished him good luck. The guards were surprised that the knight had written a letter of recommendation. They could not understand how a careless aristocrat could get the attention of that old man. The hero stopped right in front of the audience. He got a little worried and opened the doors. There were other applicants for a place in the academy staring at him. Everyone looked at Iron with a look of disapproval. The hero looked at the stage where that red-haired guard came out. He turned out to be an instructor. The man noticed some students that he thought had potential. He also noticed the second genius of the Lin Jie sword family, named Elijah Lin Jie. One of the guys was looking angrily at the talented girl. He was angry since he wouldn't have a chance to take the type seat because of her. The man explained that the boys were not apprentices yet, and warned that the training would be incredibly difficult. Only if the students could withstand the training and 2 tough tests after a year would they be able to become apprentices. Smiling, the instructor told everyone to get out. They found themselves on the training ground. Not the instructor began to explain about the place where they were. Suddenly, he got on the treadmill and started running. It was the first endurance test, and the students had to run after him. Everyone started to run after the instructor, and the instructor accelerated even more. It was very hard for Aaron as his physical condition wanted the best. The prince with blue hair was running slowly, keeping the pace. He looked back where he saw the hero, who was laying down on the ground, unconscious. Iron was in terrible pain. His heart seemed to explode at any moment. The instructor turned his attention to the hero. The prince was worried about the fact that everyone began to move away, but after gathering all his strength in a fist, he managed to get up and continued to run. The instructor smiled, and the hero realized that compared to what the man in his dream had gone through, it was a small thing. The hero was determined to become equal to that man, so he kept running. The guy promised himself never to be lazy again in his life. There was a man watching, who did not expect the hero to be able to continue the race. Suddenly the man's face changed. He noticed that something was wrong with the hero. Iron barely ran. It seemed that he could die of fatigue at any moment. Iron fell down, but the man managed to grab him in time and pull him away from the path. The others continued to run. At the same time, the man realized that the guy fell not from simple fatigue, but from the fact that he had used up all his strength. To the man, the hero seemed like an interesting guy. After a while, the hero opened his eyes. Looking around, he was surprised because he could not understand where he was. A man approached him. He said that everything was fine with the hero's health. The guy thanked the man, and the man was only proud that only because of his help the hero was able to recover so quickly. The man joked that they would see each other often, and the hero seriously replied that he understood. The man handed Iron a scroll. It was the ranking of the participants. He looked at the list and saw that he was in last place. The man tried to cheer up the hero, because in a year the ranking may change dramatically, but it was not necessary. The hero just drew conclusions for himself. The man quickly picked up Iron and told him to head to class. The teacher greeted the students, and they greeted him back. The teacher introduced himself. His name was Karaka. Karaka also explained the schedule of the students' day. After 7 in the evening, the students could do self-study. They could use everything in the academy for that. The hero was incredibly excited, as he would finally be able to pick up a sword. The teacher raised a finger and warned that there were restrictions, namely that training with weapons was forbidden. After these words, the hero was very upset. It was already evening. Lloyd and his new company were walking. They were discussing the fact that the lessons were boring. The friends began to banter with each other. Together they walked into the gym, where they saw a huge number of people exercising. They were walking along and vigorously discussing the people who were exercising on their first day. Lloyd stopped as he noticed a girl genius who was working out with a barbell. As soon as Lloyd saw Elijah, his face immediately twisted. Lloyd felt inferior seeing the girl and her level. Everyone was amazed at the way the girl did the exercises. They also noticed the hero, who was also practicing. They laughed at the hero's efforts. The hero was having a hard time with the exercise. Lloyd said they shouldn't waste their time and suggested they move away. Lloyd looked at Judith, who was a commoner, but had managed not only to get into the academy, but also to take second place. Lloyd was very offended by this outcome and was determined not to let it happen again. The girl turned around and told the guy to stop staring at her. Lloyd got nervous, and she continued talking and ordered him to get off. The friends immediately stood up for Lloyd and started yelling at the girl. They continued to argue as an interesting picture caught their attention. The girl talent approached Iron and asked him to listen to her. The hero was surprised by this turn of events. The red-haired girl was surprised, and the hero and the talented girl were discussing something. From the outside, it was not possible to hear their conversation, but it was obvious that Iron thanked her for something. The girl left the training place. The hero thought for a second, and as soon as he looked in the direction of the people who were dressed on him, they immediately turned away and pretended not to look. The red-haired girl and Lloyd were saddened by the fact that they didn't hear a single word. The girl headed towards the hero. Iron continued practicing as she called out to him. The boy was surprised and stood up to talk. The girl said to tell her everything. Iron didn't understand what she was talking about. The girl explained that she wanted to hear what she and Elijah Lin Jae had talked about. The girl was disappointed to hear what Iron and Lin Jae were talking about. It turns out that she came up and explained how to train with a barbell. The questions continued. The hero admitted that today they met for the first time. The girl found out that she wanted to leave and advised the hero to make a simpler face. The hero thought about what had just happened and continued training. Lloyd came up and asked the same question. A month passed. Lloyd and his friends were resting. Just like that, the guy was looking angrily at the hero that Lygia was helping with training. She was giving him advice while the guy did what he was told. Lloyd decided to ignore it. He realized that Elijah would take first place this time too, just as he was sure that Iron would take last place. He was sure that soon the hero would show his true self again and forget about training. Lloyd told his friends they were heading to the stadium. There they saw a red-haired girl running around. The friends were discussing the fact that Julia comes early every day to practice. Lloyd's face creased. He said that it was time for them to run too. He ordered his friends to push themselves to the limit. It had been 3 months since the hero had started training. The instructors were discussing the fact that, as they had guessed, many were exhausted, though they had spotted a few talents. The 3 of them still continued to train hard. There was also another guy, namely the hero, who could no longer be called careless. The teacher announced that the midterm was coming up. He explained that they would have to eat lunch for the time. The students were not happy, but the teacher continued. The first 5 students who make it to the finish line will receive gifts personally from the principal. The teacher announced that the exam would be in 10 days and wished the students to practice hard. Lloyd's friend said he was sure he could do it. He was sure he could easily get into the top 5. He also couldn't understand why Iron was always attracting his attention. The red-haired girl finished the training session with a new record. She was incredibly happy, but her face changed when she heard a strange sound. It was the hero overexerting himself. The girl noticed that the hero had pushed himself to the limit again, and that he had increased his physical readings many times since entering. The girl lit up after what she saw. She couldn't admit that her will was weaker than his. It was time for the exam. The teachers were anticipating the number of students who would pass. The supervisor had also arrived to watch the competition. He was determined to see the results of the young students in person. The supervisor raised his hand to the new instructor. The old man asked how old he looked, and the instructor said 55. The old man laughed and promised him a double salary, even though he was actually 90. But the other knight knew that there would be no raise as the old man was not involved in these matters. The old man turned his attention to Lin Jie, who was practicing. The leader sympathized with the girl, as she was forced to follow a certain path. Afterward, he turned his attention to the red-haired girl, who was similarly overworking herself. The old man went to stop the girl, as he didn't want the talent to destroy itself. In the end he failed, and the girl continued her training. The supervisor called her very stubborn and asked where Iron was. The teachers whispered behind the back of the old man, who had been watching the hero for 30 minutes. Iron was practicing hard. The old man walked away and told the teachers to leave the hero alone. He also said never to stop the young man, as his mind was now dominating his body. Iron tiredly fell into bed. The hero noticed that recently many things have changed, as many guys who used to ignore him began to pay attention to him. He also couldn't understand why Elijah was helping him. In the end, he decided to stop thinking about it. The hero found himself in the arms of the bed. It reminded him of his mom's arms. He didn't want to leave it. But suddenly a huge man with a sword cut it down. The hero went towards him, and though his mother tried to stop him, he thanked her for everything and went on his way. The hero got out of bed, and aura enveloped him. It was the day of the exam. Iron was walking, and people around him were only paying attention to his terrible appearance. Lloyd remained silent while his friend insulted the hero. Lloyd also realized that Judith had been overworked lately, so her condition must be terrible. He was sure that second place was in his pocket. The hero was incredibly serious, and the talented girl noticed it. The instructor announced that they would be starting soon and decided to repeat the rules. The route consisted of 4 stages, each with a different instructor. The goal was to reach the finish line in the set time. The instructor finished telling and announced the start of the challenge. The first stage was the fat schwung. Lloyd watched the past top one and realized there was no way to keep up. He was calm as he was sure he would come in second place, but his attention was drawn to a hero who was just as fast at the task. Lloyd, seeing this, assumed that after the first challenge the hero would fall off his feet. Elijah finished the first stage. Such a result was incredibly fast. A moment later it was announced that Iron had also completed the first trial, which surprised Lloyd. No one could understand how the loser could do it second to the unattainable genius Elijah. The second stage was jumping on the box, which the hero also coped with. He himself couldn't understand why, but his body changed. It felt like it was on fire. He decided to become even faster, which surprised the instructor incredibly much. He announced that Iron was able to pass the second stage. The people who were still on the first stage were shocked. The red-haired girl accelerated greatly at seeing such a success. The old man who was watching smiled, as he was happy to see the student's diligence. The third stage for the hero was a long-distance run. He ran, and was not far behind the girl of genius. He himself did not understand how, but he really increased all the physical indicators. Running, the hero realized one thing: he wanted to surpass Ilya in this test. He started to speed up, but suddenly a red-haired girl took the lead. The hero didn't expect Judith to overtake both him and Elijah. The girl had no intention of losing. She ran with all her might. She remembered how hard it had cost her to get a place in this place. The others never supported her, but she persevered. She promised she would never give up. The fourth stage was long-distance swimming. The girl was making fast progress, but suddenly her face changed. Her left leg was seized by a cramp. The girl was very angry and sad about what had happened. She saw Elijah, who had managed to overtake her. The girl was crying and slowly sinking. She began to sink to the bottom. At the right moment, a hero appeared, who decided to save the girl and lifted her from the bottom. He began to drag her to the shore. The girl did not understand why the hero does this, but the guy continued to swim to the shore. After he got there, the instructor came running, who told the hero to continue the race. Other participants had already started to jump into the water. Iron ran to continue the test. The girl looked at him as the last idiot and fainted. After a while, many participants were crying because even after doing their best, they couldn't pass the test. The instructor cheered up a participant, as there would be a second test soon, which would be more loyal than this one. Another instructor noticed that this year's students were better, as they passed a lot. The instructor noticed that a lot of talent had arrived this year, and singled out a hero, who not only saved the participant, but also managed to make it to the finish line in 34th place out of 35. Another contestant reflected on how stupid the hero was for helping another contestant. This guy was happy to come in 5th, and Lloyd came to congratulate him. They had a nice chat, like real friends. Lloyd thought about the fact that he had actually been defeated, because in a slightly different scenario, he would have been 4th. The next day, the Geots was practicing. Elijah approached him and asked why he had saved the girl. The hero didn't understand the question, but the girl repeated it. The hero stood up. The girl couldn't understand why the guy did it. Iron admitted that it seemed to him that there was no other option. Ilya explained that the girl would have been helped by the instructors, so he might not have interfered. The girl said that the guy had lost his chance to get revenge on everyone who had laughed at him. The hero changed the subject and told a little about himself. In the past, he felt as if he was in a swamp, from which he did not even try to get out, but he was pulled out on his hand by his beloved family. Because of that help, he was able to become stronger, so there was no way he could swim past while the man was drowning. That was the whole reason. The girl was silent for a bit, and later went off interjecting about the hero taking up the sword for the first time last year. The girl explained that physical training and the sword are different things, and because of his prank, the hero lost the opportunity to be instructed by a supervisor. The girl said that she would not help the guy anymore. The hero asked why the girl helped him at all. Ilya confessed that she just does not like it when someone talks about what he is an amateur. A little later, the results of the evaluation were announced. They also said that the top 5 would be given a talk with the supervisor and given awards. But the old man said the instructor forgot something. The instructor asked the hero to come up to the podium. All the students were surprised. The old man explained that although rivalry is good, you can forget about something important by focusing on the result. But the hero was not like that. He saved his comrade, who was in trouble, by sacrificing a top spot. The hero's deed was of great value. It was for this reason that the old man asked Iron to stand up. The teachers clapped, and even the other students started clapping. Later, at the counseling session with the supervisor, Lloyd realized after a dialogue that he was thinking too narrowly. The supervisor said that a narrow-minded person would not be able to admit his mistakes. After the dialogue, Lloyd left. The supervisor noticed that the young man was talented as well as willing to admit his mistakes. He praised the student highly enough. As a reward, Elijah asked to spar with the leader. He called it a reasonable choice, but also advised her to take her life into her own hands and not let it be controlled. The girl reminded him that she was asking for a sparring session, and he admitted that no other reaction could be expected. He offered to hold the training in his office. The leader was glad, as the last person had come, namely Iron. The old man asked what reward the hero wanted. The old man was most interested in Iron's answer. The hero said that he wanted to make peace with a man and asked for advice.